The Parental Rights in Education bill passed Florida's Senate this week and is now awaiting Governor Ron DeSantis' signature. The bill, which critics call the Don't Say Gay bill, prohibits teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity to young children in kindergarten through third grade. And joining us now to talk more about this is Jay Richards, Senior Research Fellow for the Heritage Foundation's DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society. Jay, welcome back. Always so good to see you. You and I have talked about this bill before, but today the White House reacted to it with Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying, quote, "It's discriminatory. It is a form of bullying. It is horrific." Jay, first off, your thoughts on that?
Well, the bill is exactly what it's called. It's the Parental Rights in Education. If you read the bill, it's almost entirely about transparency. In other words, parents should just be in on what they're being taught in schools. That's literally what the bill is about. There's also a provision basically preventing sexualization of kids from K through 3. It doesn't have the word gay in it anywhere. It doesn't prohibit the use of that word. It does say kids shouldn't be introduced by teachers to sexual orientation and gender identity issues, which unfortunately is what's happening right now. And it's very often happening behind parents' backs. There are lawsuits in play in Florida over this. And so this bill is a great first step in the right direction. I'm optimistic that Governor DeSantis will sign it. The fact that not just critics, but the media from AP to CNN won't even call this bill by its actual name, I think tells you what's actually going on.
Yeah, and Jay, why do you think this is getting so much attention and why it's getting sort of, twisted around?
Well, honestly, I mean, the way I would describe this is that we have a particular ideology. We'll call it gender ideology. Just this idea that biological sex is not real, that there are no males and females, there are no boys and girls. What there is there's this subjective gender identity that everyone chooses. This sounds crazy, frankly, to most ordinary people, but this is very deeply rooted in our educational institutions. It's been happening, unfortunately, in public schools with teacher guides and teacher training for years. And parents have just suddenly gotten wise to it. And so Florida is the first one, honestly, to step up. And the people that have been behind this for years, they're very upset because I think they understand that the vast majority of Americans, left, right, and center, if they know their kids are being taught this stuff, aren't going to want it. And so, frankly, a transparency bill that requires transparency is very likely to kill a lot of it.
Yeah, and Jay, what do you think parents should do when it comes to all this?
Well, what parents should absolutely do, first of all, find out exactly what's happening in their schools. So many parents think, okay, this stuff's happening in some other state or some other district. Find out what's actually being taught in your school. Once this bill passes, I mean, in principle, parents have rights over their children. This is generally a constitutional right, but so it should be unnecessary to pass laws like this. But the reality is there's a lot of stonewalling, and so parents need to find out exactly what's being taught on these subjects in their schools and don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, I want to switch gears here a bit. I want to talk about Texas. Texas Children's Hospital, which is the largest pediatric hospital in the country, is now halting what it calls gender-affirming treatments. This is to be in order to be in compliance, with a directive from Governor Gregg Abbott that in part classifies treatments such as puberty blockers as child abuse. I know it also carries penalties for those that violate the directive. What more can you tell us about this, and also how significant is it?
It's very significant what's happening in Texas. This was originally a 7-page judgment by Attorney General Ken Paxton, who just basically said, okay, let's look at the data, what the laws on the books in Texas say about child abuse. They determined that the types of procedures, so-called gender-affirming care, which very often means giving testosterone shots to girls for years, even surgical alterations, insofar as they involve sterilization of minors, constitutes child abuse. The media are describing this as Texas going after parents. That's really not what's happening. Texas doesn't distinguish in law between the parents or the physicians or anything like that. They just say what constitutes child abuse. But this ruling that the governor himself has affirmed is really a protection for parents. So when parents are being told by Child Protective Services, by their school's teachers, by their physicians that they need to get, say, their girls on testosterone treatments or their boys on puberty-blocking drugs, parents in Texas can now say, no, the state itself treats this as child abuse. And so what I would expect to happen is the state's not going to be going after parents. It's going to be going after, frankly, the institutional pathways that are pushing this on kids. And I'm glad that Texas is stepping up and trying to do something about it.
Yeah, and as you know, Texas is getting a lot of pushback as well. But that said, do you think other states may follow in Texas's footsteps?
I do. I would expect to see both what's happening in Florida and what's happening in Texas to continue. Those are the two states that are going to test this. They're going to get a lot of pushback. There'll be corrections on the details, I think. They'll figure out exactly how to frame it. But we need parents' rights. We need school choice. We need transparency. And we also need to focus on this standard of care, because the reality is there are procedures happening right now in which people are having their kids taken away and kids are being given sterilizing drugs. And it's happening not just with impunity, it's often happening with the authorities' tacit support, and that's absolutely got to stop.
Jay, thanks so much. Always appreciate your expertise. Thanks again.
My pleasure.